We've all had clients, haven't we, where they expect the magic wand. I'm sure you've had them. I don't have one. I tell them that. Our next guest has, I suspect, got at least one or two. And he's earned a reputation as enviable in his field. He has a reputation amongst the top elite magicians and sleight of hand artists, rightly so. And today he's going to talk with us about the psychology of magic and how perceptions are created and how they can be changed. And so I'd really love you to welcome Michael Vincent.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm so thrilled and delighted to be with you all today. When I first got the email from Joe about today's event, it really got me present to a very simple distinction about the magician and those of you that practice hypnotherapy. We're very similar in as much as we use very similar techniques. However, we're out to achieve a slightly different outcome. With hypnotherapy, your intention is to heal people from whatever psychological challenges they may be experiencing. My job as a magician is to induce the emotional state of wonder and astonishment. Where my work is now, I'm really intrigued with the notion of what experience do I leave my audience with long after the show is over? Because I'm inside a very specific context of entertainment. However, I believe that the emotions of astonishment trigger within the body chemical reactions which can induce healing. So there's a part of me which feels I'm as much a hypnotherapist as you are, as you guys are magicians. So I hope with my conversation this afternoon you can see some parallels, some similarities, and perhaps we can learn from each other. Okay? Before I begin the slideshow, I want to create a context for what you're about to hear. How many of you are aware of the difference between a puzzle, a trick, an illusion, and real magic? Right, I can see a few heads turning. All right, let's start right at the beginning. What would you say is the most commercially successful puzzle ever invented? Rubik's Cube. Isn't it interesting? How many of you here can actually solve a Rubik's Cube? Wow, that's impressive. For those of you that can't, what emotion are you left with?
Frustration, yes.
Frustration. Puzzles are designed to be solved. If you can't, it drives you crazy. Look at the emotional state. Now, think about a magic trick. Magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat, floats a lady 10 feet in the air. Our immediate reaction is, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? Don't you find it interesting that we experience the emotions of astonishment, but because of the way we're wired, our immediate reaction is trying to solve it, rather than just being with the experience of astonishment. Now, an illusion is a dichotomy between what you see and what you think you see. With magic, there's no explanation. None whatsoever. So with that thought in mind, I want to take you all through a very simple process. I'm going to show you a puzzle, a trick, and an illusion, all wrapped up into one, using these 3 pieces of rope, okay? Now, Joe, I'm going to give you the smallest piece. Don't take it personally, okay? Here you go. And you get the medium-sized piece for now, thank you. Right, see if you can follow this. This is the oldest puzzle. I'm sure you're all familiar with the cat's cradle. Used to do this with string. Without letting go of the ends, I'm going to tie a knot in the rope without letting go. Very simple puzzle. I'll do it again. See if you can follow the sequence. Watch my left forearm. Right hand comes round the back, over the front, and I double back on myself. I go through one loop and out the other side. And if you don't let go of the ends, and you allow the loops to fall off the hands, you can create a knot. Very simple. Try it when you get home, if it works. All right. Now, very simple puzzle. Now here's a very cute magic trick. Watch this. No good? Do you get it to work? Watch this. I discovered if you find the middle of the rope and pull it through each other, you can create what looks like a bow. Now, I'm going to grab each end and pull it through each loop. Pull it tight. We create a rather unusual knot. But we call this a sliding knot. Don't blink your eyes, because you can move it down the rope. If you don't like it, you can pull it slightly further down. Here's the best part. You can actually slide it completely. There's nothing funny about the ropes. Now look, I'm going to do it again using a solid piece of red rope for visual contrast. Watch closely. I'm going to tie another knot in the rope. Don't blink your eyes. This is where the magic speaks for itself. I say the magic words, and we have the jumping knot of mystery. Now, as you saw just a moment ago, you can actually slide this knot completely off the ropes, and you can actually put it back on. But here's the part even I don't understand. Look at this. It's a perfect morphing effect. Now, you've got the 3 pieces of rope, 3 different sizes. Nothing funny about them? I want you all to watch this very closely because I'm going to play a trick with your eyes and your mind. Right, can you all see the difference in size? Yes? I'm going to create the perfect illusion now of all 3 ropes appearing to be the same length. First, if I came out holding the ropes like this, your brain automatically assumes 3 ropes, 3 different sizes. Okay? Now if I bring the ends up, all I need to do is hide this middle piece inside my hand, and the brain automatically makes an assumption, 3 ropes, so they must be the same. But you've got to ask yourself, when does the assumption end? This used to be your small piece. Just a little bit longer. Here's the medium piece. And your long piece is shrunk just a little bit, just to match. So, my friends, what can we learn from this? I think it's fair to say, whenever you watch a magician, don't take anything at face value. Because look at this, we're right back where we started. The small piece, the medium piece, and right back where we started, the very long piece. Now that I've got that out of the way, here's the question. How do you feel right now? See what magic does? It releases the happy feeling. Well, I want to take you behind the curtains to see how it all works. Okay? What I'm going to talk about now is what I've called the tapestry of deception. 1970 was a very good year for me. I was 6 years old and I saw my first magician. Doug Henning, David Nixon, on television, and as a youngster, I experienced the most profound of human emotions, pure astonishment. Try and remember the last time you had an experience that literally took your breath away, and there was no thought. In that moment, you were exposed to your natural state of being. Think of little babies. If you want proof, just look at babies. And so began my quest to become a magician. And I've been very lucky. I came into magic at the tail end of a golden period. All the great masters were alive, and I met all of them. I met all of my heroes, had one-on-one coaching. And they all had many things in common. But the one thing they all had in common apart from the fact that they were technically brilliant, they had the charm, the charisma, the savoir-faire, the communication to inveigle, seduce, and charm an audience. Because get this, the magic, the technique is meaningless if the audience don't surrender to the performer. The rapport is critical. Doesn't matter what business you're in. We're all in a people business, and if we can't seduce and build that rapport, we might as well go home, because we're not going to be able to do our jobs properly. And all the great magicians had this quality. And they all inspired me with the sense of wonder. And if you look at the image of the little baby, that's who we once were. That is how we came into the world. Curious, excited, playful, joyful, blissful. And I was intrigued listening to some of the speakers earlier because it reminded me of what life was once like and how we have become in order to survive the world that we currently live in. I consider it a privilege to be a magician right now because my job now has become much more than just fooling people, but someone who is there to remind my audience that there are still some things in this world that can surprise and delight you, okay? And this is part of the reason why I find my job even more intriguing now than ever before. So, astonishment, we're going to talk a little bit about the deceptive side of magic. How does it work? I'll give you some applications, and then at the end, I've got a little bit of a mystery for you to solve, okay? All right. So, I want to introduce you to someone very special. This gentleman is probably the greatest magician I ever saw. I saw him on television in 1978. I was 14 years old, Christmas Day, and Slidini was on a magic show. He did the most beautiful magic I'd ever seen. And I said to myself, gosh, I'd really love to meet him. Be careful what you ask for. A few years later, I met the master, and I was in his living room, receiving tuition from the greatest magician I've ever seen in my life. And Slidini, for me, although I wasn't aware of hypnotherapy and NLP back then, he was a master psychologist when it came to manipulating people's thought process. He was born in Italy, and he spent most of his life in America, growing up, and consider he couldn't speak any English. So he became a student of people, and his entire system for performing beautiful, deceptive magic is built around how people function and how they process information. I'll share some of that with you in just a moment. I spent 4 days with him. I never saw him again. And in those 4 days, it was like having the top of my head open, and he poured all this information in. I didn't argue with him, I just did as I was told. It wasn't until the late 90s it all began to make sense. And I began to inquire, how can I use this on a much broader platform? Here I am today. Okay. So, Slidini's legacy. First thing he ever said to me, magic, the experience of magic can happen in only one place, and that is in the mind of the spectator. Now, how can you translate that into your business? You want to translate the feeling of well-being with your patients. So they come in with one challenge, but you want them to leave with a totally different experience of themselves and of life. I kind of wonder, who is the better magician, you or me? What you do is quite miraculous. Depression, someone that's suicidal, and yet you want them to leave your environment feeling that they're significant, they have a value, and they have a contribution to make to society and the community. To me, there's nothing more miraculous than that. And Slidini dedicated his entire life to teaching his students this simple distinction. If magic can happen in only one place, and that is between people's ear, what do we need to do? Who do we need to become as magicians in order for our audience to have that experience? Let's go a little bit further. Okay. one of the things he did with me was to illustrate what he meant by the tapestry of magic. And this is a digital representation. It's one of those gigantic woven fabrics. And Slidini's belief was that a magic trick is much more than what a magician does with his hands. There's a whole infrastructure in the background. The sleight of hand, the mastery, the script, the presentation, the delivery, the posture, how you relate to people. All these threads woven together to create the overall experience of magic. And if we dig in a little further, with this image, it begins to pixelate the closer you get. With a tapestry, if you get really close, you can see the individual threads that make up the big picture. Now, if any one thread is missing, it ruins the effect. Everything has to be in its place. So we can't take anything for granted. When I was very young, I was obsessed with the technical aspects. I wanted my technique to be impeccable. I didn't worry about the psychology. My technique was very good. In fact, it created the momentary feeling of magic, but it wasn't long lasting. Why? Because I hadn't studied the other elements. So I began to stack my knowledge. Okay. So this is just one element. When I began to dig a little bit deeper, I began to look at all the individual elements that make up the complete experience of magic. So, the tapestry of deception is just one topic, which is comprised of the effect, the experience of magic, strong tricks, transformational vocabulary, using language as part of the inveigling exercise of seduction. Okay? Very interesting subject, by the way. The ebb and flow of tension and relaxation. If you study people, you'll very often find people in one of two worlds. They're either upset or they're relaxed and charmed. The ebb and flow of tension, relaxation. There's no in between. Okay? Timing, leading, pacing, rhythm. Another universal skill of life. Everyone has a different rhythm. And if we are going to create that rapport with them, we need to understand, what's this person's rhythm? How can I pace? How can I lead? How can I create that rapport with them? Mannerisms. Slidini preferred the use of the word mannerisms as opposed to body language, because we all have different ways of acting and being. Okay? The coordination of words and action. The 5 points of body language, which I'll give you right now. Eyes, speech, hands, physiology, feet. Powerful. Because before language, all we had to communicate was our being. Our eyes, grunting, hands. Okay? And this is unbelievably powerful. Okay? So, this is what the tapestry of deception represents. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at strong magic for a moment. I want to give credit to Tony Bazan because I'm a big fan of mind mapping, and it's helped me to conceptualize and visualize all of these individual elements. So, what makes up a strong trick? In my mind, the effect or the experience must be clear. Clarity is very important to me. My audience must be able to describe the experience very easily. It has to be memorable, okay? The methodology is the engineering. What makes it work? The construction, the design of the effect, and the 3 pillars of strong magic for me is a combination of pure sleight of hand, gimmicks, you'll be amazed at the engineering possibilities, okay? And the psychology of magic. And I can create strong magic with those 3 pillars all working together, okay? This is never seen. It's just experience. I can't talk about that, otherwise I'll get thrown out the magic circle. But what I can talk about is the psychology, okay? And part of the psychology is the audience involvement, their emotional and psychological investment in the experience. Without any rapport, the audience won't get involved because the experience will be empty and meaningless to them. So I've got to give them a reason to participate, okay? And this is my favorite topic, the magical dichotomy. What is the magical dichotomy? I'd like you to consider for a moment that there is no such thing as real magic. Real magic doesn't exist. However, the emotions of magic, the emotions of astonishment are real, and we've all experienced them at some time or another. So, where's the dichotomy? The dichotomy is conflict between the intellect and the emotions. The average intelligent person, having witnessed a great magician, will say to them, now wait a minute, I'm an intelligent human being. I know there's no such thing as magic, but why do I feel the way that I do right now? But wait a minute, that is impossible. He knows it's impossible, and he knows it can't be done, and yet the individual just experienced it. If the magician does his job right, the individual or an audience will have that conversation for the rest of their lives. That dichotomy and that conflict, okay? This turns me on. Because I don't want my audience to go away dismissing the experience. I want them to have that raging conflict. Why? Because they will remember me for the rest of their lives. Most magicians, you won't remember them. You look at magicians you see on television, apart from David Blaine, David Copperfield, can you remember any of them? They're totally unforgettable. Why? Because they haven't created anything with you. They haven't built the relationship and given you, this is a gift. That dichotomy is a gift. So consider, this is just one elaborate strand of a very big subject. If I went into the other elements, we'd be here all day. Okay? However, I felt this would be the best place to start because I'm a magician, I do tricks, and from this, you can take away something for yourself. Consider for a moment your patients, they come in with a conflict. Your job is to unravel and unpick the conflict. Where's the raging war within this individual? How can I provide them with an access that sets them free? That's really extraordinary, okay? So, if we move on. Part of the experience of magic for me is what I call the 3 M's. The 3 M's represents magical, meaningful, and memorable. The experience has to be magical, meaningful, and ultimately memorable. Let's break it down. The experience of magic, that's all it is. It's an emotional, real-time experience. When it's over, the audience don't take away anything with them other than the experience and what they made it mean. As human beings, we are meaning-making machines. We make up stuff about stuff, and we live inside the world of stuff, rather than the facts. Okay? So, if I do my job right, they'll have a magical experience. Now, meaningful, to me, is getting the audience to answer one critical question. Why should they care? Why should the audience care? Why should anyone care? Boy meets girl. Boy asks girl out for a date. Why should she care to say yes? I want to do a business deal with you. Why should you care about doing business with me? Why? If you can answer that question, we can do business together. Really simple. Look at Apple computers. I find it amazing that they upgrade their products regularly and people go crazy over it. And they haven't finished using the ones they bought previously. Very seductive. They found a way to get their audience to answer this question. So, here's my equation. Magical and meaningful equals memorable. Simple, okay? All right. I'd like to give you a little example of that right now. Anita, would you like to join me up here? Let's give her a big round of applause. Very much for being my magical assistant. Excellent, we stand right here. Tell me, have you been a magician's assistant before?
I haven't.
You're dressed for the part, you look wonderful. Okay, I've got something for you. Tell me something. Do you have any idea what I'm holding in my hand? This is the world's first and only invisible pack of cards. These are for you. Do me a favor, give the cards a good shuffle. It's a good idea if you take them out of the box first. Alright, I'll take the box. Alright, give the cards a shuffle. Tell me, do you always shuffle like that?
Not finished yet.
You must have been a croupier in another life. All right, keep shuffling. We're going to have a card chosen at random. Joe, what colour would you like, red or black?
Black.
A black card. A spade or a club?
Club. Club?
Club,
Yeah.
okay. Which one of the clubs would you like? Ace to king, any value?
Me?
Yeah.
4.
The 4 of clubs. So black card, club, 4 of clubs. Is that fair?
Yeah.
You've seen magicians make those pretty fans, right? Can you do one for me now? Took me 6 months to learn that. 2 seconds flat. You're a natural. Do me a favour. Can you see the 4 of clubs in there?
Yeah.
Can you see it? You're crazier than I am. Do me a favour. Take it out. Show it to the audience. Can you all see it? Yeah. Don't worry, the men in white coats are on their way. Put it back in the pack the opposite way around.
Okay.
Square the cards up. Okay. And they go back inside the box. Beautifully done. So, you've shuffled an invisible pack of cards. We had a card generated at random, a black card, a club, 4 clubs, which you turned upside down inside this deck. Do you know what's beautiful about invisible cards? They're much lighter than air, which means you can suspend them on mid-air. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, why don't they fall? There's always an invisible shelf around when I need one. There's only one problem with this trick. I wish I had a deck of cards to complete it, but look, I can make these visible, okay? Now, you're probably wondering if this is the same pack that I need to shuffle. Well, if it is, there should be one card upside down in the middle. Yes? And it's just as well you're up here with me. Because if I go through the cards, you can see there is one card upside down, right next to the 5 of diamonds. And we had a card generated at random, a black card, a club. This lady went for the 4 of clubs. And since you're up here, can you just confirm these cards don't stick together? Perfectly normal. And as I spread them, you can see there is in fact one card upside down in the middle. What colour is that?
Black.
And the suit?
Clubs.
And the value?
4.
You better show them, they're not going to believe it. Thank you. All right. Okay. So, this is a very interesting conversation now because the psychology of magic and how it works has been wrapped up into this phrase that we call misdirection. It's a phrase that magicians have used for centuries, and it's a phrase which is now permeated throughout our entire language. It's being used in business, I've heard it used in films, and so forth. But what is misdirection? You don't need to answer, but if you have a thought, write it down, because what I'm about to do now is to break this down even further and give you a brand new distinction, which I think has far more reaching implications throughout life. One of the finest writers of magic was a gentleman named Jean Hugard, and in a book called 20th Century Magic, he defined misdirection as falling into one of 2 parts, the mental and the physical. The mental side is literally controlling what people think. Think of subliminal advertising, control and conditioning. Physical misdirection is diverting your attention away from one area while something interesting happens over here. Pickpockets use this all the time. They nudge you in the street while they surreptitiously take your wallet out of your back pocket. It's not rocket science. However, to use the 2 together in a very elegant manner creates a slightly different experience, because the audience and the spectator will not feel anything has happened. Misdirection in its purest form, the audience don't think the magician has done anything. It looks as if it happened, as if by magic. Okay. So, if we look at misdirection from a physical point of view, diverting the attention of the audience away from the point at which a secret action is being done. oh, you look over there while he does something over here. Okay? Mental misdirection is the art of misdirecting the minds of the audience away from the real cause of the effect. This reminds me of the classic joke have you heard the gag where the difference between magicians and politicians? Do you know what the difference is? Well, magicians will tell you beforehand they're going to deceive you. So what we have here is the access for creating, building, and consolidating beautiful relationships. And I don't like to use the word misdirecting because it has negative connotations. I'm going to give you some new words to consider in just a moment. So, the misnomer. Mis and direct. You've got two words there. Okay? Really and truly, this implies directing away from one focal point to another. Where in actual fact, my mentor, Alan Allen, he used to own a magic shop in Southampton Road, the Magic Spot, he helped me to appreciate something very interesting about misdirection. Misdirection is nothing more than the initiation of a train of thought. You're having one thought, but I can have a simple conversation with you, and it sends your brain down an entirely different route. In neuro-linguistic programming, they call that pattern interrupts. Very powerful technique, okay? And the one thing he helped me to appreciate and respect is that the intellect of my audience is at least equal to mine, which presupposes that I'm meeting you as an equal. If I can do that, we have a level playing field. Have you noticed some performers, whether they're magicians or actors or singers, you can immediately feel that they're superior to you, and they're acting this way. In some cases, you sense they're apologizing for being in your presence. There's just something in their being. And yet, in some cases, you'll meet a performer who has met you as an equal, and you feel comfortable in their presence. Very powerful. Okay. I'll introduce you to another great magician, Fred Capps. One of my heroes. Saw him on television. He died just before I had the chance to meet him, but he inspired me. I misdirect even when I don't need to. What does this presuppose? When he's not doing any magic, his manner, his deportment, his gentlemanliness is conditioning you to everything. So when he starts doing a trick, everything appears natural, exactly as you experienced him previously. So once he starts the magic, there's nothing unnatural in his being and the way he delivers. Everything is congruent. That's another beautiful word, congruency. And he was a beautiful magician. Go onto YouTube, you'll see what I mean. Okay? So what I learned from Fred Capps is to monitor and study myself. How do I act and who do I become when I'm angry? Who do I become when I'm happy and sad? What aspects of my personality will people find most agreeable and accepting? Once I worked that out, I was able to craft my sleight of hand inside my own natural physiology. So everything was natural and congruent. Okay? Thank you. So, if we take all of that into my context, here's some of the examples of where I work. Banquets, on stage, cocktail receptions, wherever there's a gathering of people, my first job is the initiation of rapport. I always try to establish the rapport before the show starts. Because if the audience don't accept me, they won't accept what I have to offer. If your patients come into your environment and they don't feel comfortable, nothing you do is ever going to work. Okay, let's look at the context outside of that. The context of life, social interactions, family events, business ventures, wherever you meet people, the rapport begins. I have a belief, wherever I meet someone new for the first time, the seeds of that relationship are going to be planted within the first 7 seconds of me saying hello. And if I don't respect those first 7 seconds, seeds are going to be planted which will have a dramatic impact on my relationship with that individual. So I'm very mindful of who I'm being in that moment. Why? Because I want to plant my energy. I want to plant powerful acorns on fertile ground so the relationship can grow and we can both benefit. And I take responsibility for that. Okay? So, what's really going on inside all of this? I spoke about misdirection being, it's not an ugly word, but I don't think it's really appropriate for what we're really doing. We're building relationships in the final analysis, and I call it audience attention control. And if I use this context as an example, you're the audience, I'm the speaker, and I want to build rapport with every person in this room. I don't just see one person, I see everybody. One active energy. And I want to build the energy with every person in this room. So with this distinction, it goes back to what I said. 7 seconds from the minute I come on, I've got that golden opportunity to create the joy, the laughter, and the possibility that we're going to have a good time together. And then the show begins. So, what creates all of this is that lump of matter right between our ears called the human brain. I love this photograph because when we come into the world, we come in as pure possibility and potential. The greatest computer ever made between our ears, the brain. You've probably heard this phrase, but it's worth repeating. I think it's the greatest tragedy of the human condition that we're not taught how to use our brains more effectively. And many people around the world will leave this world not fully experiencing how powerful they are. Why? Because they've come into a world where they have no choice against what the world is, how the world is functioning, and who they become in the space of it all. This is the greatest crime to our humanity, because we've all seen great strides in human achievement, human development, done by people who are no smarter than any of us in this room. And this image, to me, represents pure potential, pure possibility. The gentleman that spoke earlier said that our parents screw us up. Think about that. Let's have some compassion for a moment. Our parents did the best they could with the knowledge that they had. We are doing the best we can with the knowledge we had, albeit we're slightly further ahead in the conversation. And because we're slightly further ahead, we can take responsibility for what we choose to pass on to the younglings. Okay? Children really are the future if we catch them early. How many of you like Star Wars? I'm a Star Wars fan. Did you know in the Jedi Temple they don't accept children over the age of 9? Once you hit 9 years of age, they won't accept you. And what happened to Anakin? He became Darth Vader, and he was 9 years old. He had already experienced torment, the death of his mother, abandonment, and also killing the woman he loved. And this seduced him to the dark side of the Force. Let's use this metaphor right now. Think about your own lives. Think about significant events that have happened to you. Okay? I can think of quite a few. And when I look back on my life, I should tell you, I turned 50 yesterday. And I just had one of those quiet moments where I thought to myself, what have I really achieved? In the grand scheme of things, not a lot. I'm a good magician. I can speak pretty good. I know how to seduce and inveigle. But so what? If I was to drop dead today, yesterday, who would give a damn? I was left with the empty feeling that I still had work to do. There's still work to be done. And when I knew I was coming here today, I wanted to drop this conversation in because I think every one of us in this room, if we took this on, we could take what we're doing right now and do it even better. And we could make a much bigger impact together. Okay? And if we get back to basics, this could be the possibility of a brand new access. Plot this photograph in your mind. There was a moment in time when all of us were empty. We were trusting, relaxed, calm, peaceful, in a state of pure bliss until something happened that upset the whole system. Imagine for a moment if nothing had happened, who would we have become as possibilities? That's an interesting question to ponder, okay? You became a hypnotherapist, by the way. I became a magician. So let's give ourselves a round of applause for that, okay? If there's one thing I'm present to, we don't acknowledge our achievements enough, okay? So, I spoke about the greatest computer. Here it is. Because of my hearing problem, I said to my ear specialist, with everything you know about how the ear works, don't you find it amazing that you still haven't worked out a cure for tinnitus? She just looked at me and said, well, yeah. And don't you also find it amazing that the brain controls body temperature, the heartbeat, the movement of our fingers? Is there a possibility that it could control the loud ringing in my ear? I just had this conversation. I said, well, yeah. So maybe, with all of the injections you're giving me, it's totally useless, that I can actually heal myself. I can actually turn down the volume in my own head. Guess what? It works. 5 minutes every day, sit quietly, and just turn the volume down. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, magic is happening. Because I'm in this hyper-tense situation, it gets louder. But this is it. This is the nerve center. This controls everything. And in my work, I am working with the eye and the mind. Check this out. The eye is nothing more than a gateway to the mind. You're looking at me right now, but you're actually seeing me with your mind. You're experiencing me with your mind. My audience sees the trick, but they experience the magic in their minds. Okay? A gateway to the mind. So, what is the secret that makes the magic work from a psychological point of view? This is Slidini's greatest gift to me. He said to me, what happens in front of the eye will not necessarily register on the mind. Think about that. How many of you can drive a car? Everyone. Have you ever had one of those journeys where you've been driving, say, for 90 minutes and you can't remember the last 10 minutes of your journey home? But you got home safely. Have you considered why? I think the subconscious is somewhere around here. The cerebellum oblongata, I think they call it. This part of the brain where we learn all the motor skills. Okay? Amazing. Pianos, sleight of hand, martial arts, music, all happens in that little motor area where through repetition we become expert at something. 1,000 hours, or is it 10,000 hours of practice? Whatever. Anyway, for a magician, because the eye is a gateway to the mind, my job is to create a smoke screen between what you see and what the brain registers. In my world, the brain is the greatest video recorder, and it is switched on at the moment of birth. Press play, and it is recording everything. Everything. I think it'd be really interesting if we could take our brains, plug in some wires, and a person's entire history shows up on the screen, and you see everything that the brain's recorded. My job is to create a smoke screen between critical moments in a trick, which I can't cover naturally, which you see, but doesn't register. And you go away thinking, but I didn't do anything. Well, I did, but there were moments where the brain switched off, even though you were looking. Isn't that cool? In one sense. What's amazing to me is the fact that it's possible to bring down shutters, even though people are looking. They just don't see certain things. And it's not a lapse in attention. No, people are very attentive. They have a reason to stop looking, even though they're looking. How is this done? Very simple. It goes right back to what I mentioned from slide earlier. The ebb and flow, tension and relaxation. It's the fight or flight syndrome. And it's hardwired into our DNA. And magicians have been exploiting this for centuries. And Slidini's genius was to see it, manipulate it, and communicate it to all his students. The funny thing was, he didn't speak any English, very little English. So when he told me to put my body in a certain position, I did it without really understanding why. Because he didn't have a language to communicate it to me. This is my own evaluation, using modern day language to communicate his genius. And this was Slidini's major discovery. Look at his body posture, majestic, open, powerful, ready to receive the applause at the end of a great trick. But in the middle of the routine, he would be going through all sorts of contortions with his body, which you would consider natural. But there's so much going on in the background. So what I'd like to do now is to give you an example of what I've just spoken about. So I would like this gentleman to come on up. Come on up, sir. Give him a big round of applause. Okay. Thank you. Is that Graham?
Graham.
Nice to meet you, Graham. Are you a hypnotherapist?
I am.
You are? Do you like your job?
I do.
Yeah, what do you like about it?
See it change people.
To help people,
Yeah.
make a difference.
Sure.
We're all in the same boat. Do you mind if we try a little experiment together?
Yeah.
Great. Would you describe yourself as a highly observant individual?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Perfect. I want you to notice the spatial distance between us. Everything's going to happen at arm's length, all right? Can you go like this for me? Keep absolutely still. Lower your hand. Watch closely. Just hold that. Without looking, what card are you holding? Ace of clubs. Excellent. I just triggered his recall mechanism. It's the part of the brain we use for accessing stored memories, experiences. Okay? Ace of clubs. I'm going to trigger an emotion now. Would you bet a month of your salary that you're still holding the Ace of clubs right now? I don't blame you. Most people wouldn't. Do you know why? Well, the fear of loss is greater than the promise of gain. It's part of human nature. Okay, if there's any doubt, you can double check. Still there? Now we have conviction. Okay, lower your hands slightly. Do you realize I'd have to be the coolest magician to get that card to change while he's holding it? Guess what? I can. But I've got to cheat slightly. I've got to use the other black ace, the ace of spades. And right between your fingertips, I can put the ace of spades in and take out the ace of clubs, which is cheating if you think about it. And if I move the cards around now, I can do this long enough to introduce a pattern interrupt to your train of thought. Without looking, it's a 1 in 2 chance. Which one would you say is on top, spade or clubs?
If I'm honest, I've no idea. But yeah, so spade.
Ace of spades.
Yeah.
Have you noticed I've been talking a lot?
Yeah.
Look, don't hate me for this. But I think you will probably miss when the black aces end up in my pocket. But this raises a very interesting question.
What are you holding?
Thank you. I use this trick for magicians as part of my lectures to illustrate the same conversation I'm sharing with you now. I won't explain how the trick works technically, but I'll explain what's going on in the mind. Okay? Did you notice the minute Graham came up, I met you? Let's just reenact that, okay? So you were over there. Boom, contact. Eye contact. Body language. I'm very intent. I want to make the connection. I want you to feel comfortable. And I held your gaze. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Firm handshake. Got you at ease, okay? And my next question to you was, are you a hypnotherapist? See my head movement? I want to generate interest, body language. Pay attention to my body throughout, okay? Why do you like your job? So, by asking that question, he now feels significant about himself. He feels even more significant because I was able to recreate what he just said. Well, you want to make a difference? We're in the same job. Wow. So now I have a new friend. I then said, notice the spatial distance, okay? I also said to you, would you describe yourself as a highly observant individual? This is a killer question. And this question is designed to attack the ego. Magician's secret weapon number 1, attack the ego. Everybody wants to see themselves as a winner. And we heard earlier that society is set up for us to lose. We're not good enough. We can't do this. It's designed to enslave us. We need to renew our minds. In that question I just did, I renewed your image of yourself. I amplified your self-concept. Oh yeah. I could see it in your emotion. Okay? Alright, so you went like this. Now he's ready and willing to follow my lead. Remember the leading and pacing? So I got you to go like this. Watch closely. I now bring the audience in by doing this. Arm's length. Killer question number 2. What card are you holding? I just triggered your recall mechanism. It's the part of the brain we use for accessing stored memories and experiences. Right, I'm now going to trigger an emotion. Killer question number 3. Attack the ego again. Would you bet a month's salary that you're still holding the ace of clubs? Immediate reaction was, no. Human nature. The fear of loss greater than the promise of gain. Okay? Low aversion to risk. Okay. I then throw in a curve. I'd have to be the coolest magician to get that card to change while you're holding it. I've just told you what's going to happen. As an audience, you're wondering, no way. I now have everyone in this room wondering, how's he going to do it? I now have you looking exactly where I want you to look. I have to cheat slightly. I have to use the other black ace, the ace of spades. But also, there's a tiny gap right between your finger where I can put the ace of spades in and the ace of clubs out, which is cheating if you think about it. Now, if I move them around, I can interrupt your train of thought. Now, without looking, which one would you say is on top, spade or clubs? Have you noticed I've been talking a lot? Believe it or not, the trick is over. Because look, I now have the black ones in my pocket. Which raises a very interesting question. Show them. Okay. What can we get from this? I explained about 75% of why that trick works. The other 25 took me a quarter of my life to master, which is the intricacies and techniques of sleight of hand. Okay? What took me longer to master was having absolute faith in the psychology that people's brains will work the way I want it to work within the context of that trick, in the context of any trick that I perform. And as you've just seen, it does. So how can we translate this experience into what you do? Has there ever been a time when you were working with a patient and you experienced a lot of resistance? Did you ever stop and ask yourself why? The reason could be, maybe they didn't feel comfortable, or they didn't trust you enough, or they were embarrassed about a piece of information they didn't want to share with you. Human nature. The foundation for anyone to be open and authentic with you or with me is in direct proportion to how willing I am to be open and authentic with them. Do you realize what a vulnerable space it is to be on stage performing or speaking to an audience? Which is why public speaking has been considered the #1 terror trap for people. And I think the secret of success is vulnerability in every sphere of life. Now, why is it this simple word, vulnerability, has negative connotations? Where in actual fact, it's a very empowering space to be in. This is the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, my friends. The real secret, I think, of my job, what you do, how we interact with people, the boy meet girl situation, any relationship that we are trying to initiate and build comes down to our willingness to be vulnerable. And I believe if we have the courage to be vulnerable, it provides an access for others to be open with us. And this is our relationship being built at the most authentic level possible. No pretending, no hiding, just the truth being spoken backwards and forwards. My audience knows I'm going to deceive them. And I tell them up front, that's what's going to happen. But part of my game plan is to make them enjoy the process. Okay? That is the big secret. I really hope you keep this to yourself. Don't tell anyone. All right, because we're all in this together. Thank you very much.
Well, wasn't that magic? Thank you very much, Michael Vincent. Now, the poll. A lot of the magician's work is about the element of surprise, is it not? Yes? Well, hypnotherapists can do surprise. Did Michael say that it was his 50th birthday yesterday? Yes. Would you all please start to sing? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. The elements of surprise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Does anyone have a camera?